If you watch a trigonometry podcast run by a Russian guy, Konstantin, and there is another guy, you will notice that they have done a lot of videos on immigration and Western civilization and especially Islamic fundamentalism. But critics believe that they are trying to hide so many things, or they do not discuss so many things, especially the role the United States and the West played in promoting Islamic fundamentalism. And it does not start with the Afghan War of 1979. In reality, if you look at the British policy, for instance, they promoted Darul Uloom Deoband, or the Islamic learning place, which is called Deoband. It is the largest seminaries, and most of the mullah who graduated from them, barring a few exceptions, they supported the British dispensation in that country. Similarly, there was another Barelvi religious institution that did not oppose, the British Empire there. If we look at Egypt, in Egypt, Ikhwan al-Muslimin was supported by Western colonial power and to some extent the United States, because their main target was secular dictator Jamal Abdul Nasser. In Indonesia, it was Mastumi Party, which was an Islamist party, and again there was a sort of secular popular leader who was a bit Islamist, but not Islamist in modern sense. He did have religious leaning, but he sort of wanted a blending of religion and secularism and socialism. So Icarno, his government was toppled by Suharto, who enjoyed the support of the United States and its Western allies. In reality, Noam Chomsky and many other intellectuals have accused CIA of preparing the list of the intellectuals, left leaning intellectual and activists, passing it on to Suharto's government that carried out brutal repression of PKI, which was a communist party there, killing more than 500,000 people, to the extent that some areas of Indonesia developed sanitation problem because so many bodies had been dumped. So, in Indonesia that used to be known because of its secularism, because of its progressive culture, today it's known because of the mastermind of Bali bomb blast, Abu Bakr Bashir, or something like that. The terrorist, I can't exactly recall his name. In the same way, in Iran today, they talk about ayatollahs and the mullahs, but Constantine and trigonometry podcast and other right wingers, they do not bother to tell you that basically the mentor of Imam Khomeini, who was the leader of Iranian revolution, was Ayatollah Kashani, who was also the speaker of the Majlis. For some time he was allied with Mossadegh. Later on he hatched conspiracies against him, and he was a sort of collaborator against Mossadegh, who nationalized Anglo-Iranian oil company, asserting that the profit coming from it should be used on Iranian people. At that time, Anglo-Iranian company would earn something like $200 million, and it would give a very paltry amount to the Iranian government. That's why Iranian were demanding that the share of Iranian government should be raised, which was not raised. Although some oil companies did raise the share of Saudi government, who were operating in Saudi Arabia and also in Guatemala, but they refused to do so in Iran, and Mossadegh nationalized, and then a sort of uprising triggered there, and it was led by Ayatollah Kashani, or one of the main leaders of the rebellions or uprising or the protest was Ayatollah Kashani, who was supported and backed by American CIA and British intelligence agency. So they would not tell you that. In the same way, in Egypt, Ikhwan al-Muslimin, I have already mentioned. In Afghanistan, Hizb Islami, whose leader has been accused, I mean, some of his opponents accused him of trying to throw acid towards the face of women in Kabul University. So Gulbuddin Hikmatyar, who was a fundamentalist, he was supported by American CIA, Abdul Rasul Sayyaf, Yunus Khanuni, and other people. Constantine has been to Central Asian state and a number of Muslim state, and he must know. So apparently, his critics may be right in saying that he's trying to hide these facts. So these fundamentalists were not only supported by Reagan's, who received them in the White House, but they were also in a way supported by the icon of the British far right, or many far right activists at least, like her, Margaret Thatcher. She also supported, and her government also supported these fundamentalists who were opposing. What were they opposing? They were opposing because the progressive government there banned child marriage, it banned interest system, it tried to carry out land reforms. Afghanistan's arable land, 87% arable land was held by around 6 or 7% conservative tribal lords who had religious leanings as well, and they established more than 22 higher educational institutions. Kabul University used to be one of the best universities in the region, and you could still see the footage of Kabul University. The number of women in government departments and other departments had drastically improved, and there were more women in Kabul University and government departments during that time than the West and the Americans supported fundamentalists who toppled that government. And today you can see what's happening in Afghanistan. So the fundamentalists of Afghanistan were supported by them. The Chechen fundamentalists were supported by the West in one way or another way, directly or indirectly. Why? Because their primary target is Russia. Tomorrow, imagine if East Turkestan movement in western province of China, rises against the Chinese Communist government. Who will support them? Kosovo Liberation Army, who were supported by them. So trigonometry does not tell you honestly. Many critics might argue that they are trying to tell you the half truth. They supported fundamentalists, they supported these extremists, including the West and the United States. They even supported Osama bin Laden and all these fundamentalists, Khalid Ramzi and other people, Ramzi Yusuf, who carried out one of the plans during the decade of 90s. So they were their assets because these fundamentalists were fighting in Afghanistan. In the same way, during the decade of 90s in Yugoslavia, their main target was Milosevic. So they supported Muslim fundamentalists there as well. And one of those fundamentalists, one of the guys who got radicalized after visiting Bosnia, he was also accused of killing American journalist Daniel Pearl. So this is the reality which trigonometry podcast and many right wingers do not want to tell you. The bitter reality is that they have supported fundamentalists, they have supported extremists to counter communism. Now, even today, look at Jolani of Syria, the terrorist, the known terrorist. He was one of the founders of Al Qaeda. He was the one of the founders of ISIS, or Islamic State. He was also involved in Al Nusra Front. Now he's hobnobbing with Donald Trump, and the West is trying to normalize relations with him at the time when minorities in that country really feel threatened. Look at Afghan Taliban. They are thriving on American aid now. So these are the same guys who have put millions of women in open prison. In a way, women cannot get education, they cannot run their business, they cannot do any job, they cannot get higher education, right? They have been closed down, they cannot go out unaccompanied, right? In many cases, even in hospitals. And who is supporting them? Who is providing them aid? Of course, different people are doing that. China and Russia are also doing that. But the United States is also giving them aid. So these far right activists or right wingers, whenever they talk about Islamic fundamentalism, whenever they talk about Islamic extremism and the ways to counter it, they never bother to tell you the history. They never tell you that how the West and the United States supported fundamentalists in Indonesia, in Egypt, in Pakistan, in Afghanistan, in Iran, in Chechnya, in Dagestan, in the western province of China. So the reality is that the reality is that these fundamentalists were supported by the West. So many critics might argue that trigonometry podcast should have a sense of responsibility, and whenever they talk about fundamentalism or Islamic extremism, they must mention the role that the United States and its Western allies have played.